Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Babu Baizak and I'm a third-year medical student at Florida State University, and today we're going to be talking about my journey thus far in medical school. I'll talk about my experience through the first two didactic years and then my transition into clinical years during the third year, and then my future plans for the next year coming up. Let's get into it. So the first 2 years of medical school is your foundational knowledge of medicine that you're going to carry on with you into your clinical years and your career. So it's a lot similar to undergraduate years where you attend lectures and then you take a test on them and you do quizzes and assignments throughout the certain block that you're in. The only difference is you're quite literally drinking out of a fire hose and trying to retain as much information as you can so that you can do well on your exams. The lifestyle is, however, much different. It's a lot more regimented. You have required sessions to attend throughout the week, whether it be required lectures or CLC, which is the clinical learning, where you go in and practice your clinical skills with a standardized patient so that you get a good head start on clinical practice early on, which is what I love about FSU because they started from day one of medical school. Don't fret, there is a lot of time for extracurriculars. However, there's usually a couple hours of chunks throughout your day where you can dedicate it to study, relax, read up on things, do your on-keys and practice questions. But usually for me, after 5 or 6 o'clock, my brain tends to kind of shut off a little bit and it becomes harder for me to study. So I use that time to partake in extracurricular activities. Some of those included, for me at least, intramural sports. I did some intramural flag football and dodgeball, which was a lot of fun. But not only that, you can also join different types of interest groups and clubs. Personally, I was interested in emergency medicine coming into medical school, so I applied for the vice president position for EMIG, which stands for Emergency Medicine Interest Group, and I was responsible for creating the disaster day that we had during the winter of our first year. And essentially what Disaster Day was is we created a kind of a scenario of a disasters day where we taught different students and participants how to intubate patients, do a fireman carry, apply a tourniquet, take vital signs, and all that kind of jazz. And what was great about it is we had trained professionals like the ambulance crew and other physicians on scene to kind of help us and educate us as we went through the day. So my first year sort of just entailed a lot of those kinds of activities, and then we did get a couple months off during the summer. Some people used it to go travel. Some people used it to get a way early head start on studying for step one. I used it to go back to the ER where I truly feel like I belong at, and I picked up my old position as an emergency care technician. And I just worked around the ER we have in Tallahassee with my old friends and colleagues that I knew from undergrad working the same position. So that was a lot of fun, and I tried to carry it on into the next fall semester. However, it proved to be too much to handle at once, and I knew I had to prioritize my studies, so I ended up resigning from the position somewhere in October when I was in my neurology block, and it was just getting to be too much for me. I was trying to save up some money, maybe decrease my financial burden, but at the end of the day, we're here to learn, and that should be our priority, and that's exactly what I prioritized. But I will say it was such a great feeling to be back in the emergency department. Like I said, I just feel like I belong there. Every time I'm in the dynamic of emergency medicine, there's just something about it that gets me excited and makes me very happy. So come year two, halfway through, right around after Christmas break, that's when we started really for lack of better terms, panicking for step one, because that's our first board exam that is a big deal. Luckily now it's pass-fail, so we don't necessarily have to do above and beyond in order to pass it. We just need to pass it. There is a downside to it because now it puts much more pressure on your performance on step two, which is what I will be studying for this upcoming semester, but more on that later in the video. So I finished up the second semester of my second year, and then I moved back home actually because we had about 6 weeks of dedicated study time where we can go anywhere and do our studies for step one. So what I decided to do, along with majority of the people, is go home and study at home where you can be taken care of by your family if you have the luxury to do so. I certainly did, and I was very happy that I did so because my mom and my grandma essentially just took care of me, had breakfast, lunch, and dinner ready for me, did my laundry for me, took care of all my expenses while I was at home, where all I did was work out and study. And when you kind of focus in on two things and you go full ham on it, I think you reap the most benefits out of it. So it's something that I feel like everyone should do for those big board exams. So I took my step 1 exam right around end of May, and when I tell you those few weeks afterwards being the most gruesome weeks of anticipation and worry, I am not kidding you. I was sweating and thinking about my exam score every single day, because until you get that email saying that you passed, you are just nerve-wracked. And I was. But thankfully I passed, and I had about a month to kind of goof around and travel. So I went to Puerto Rico, hung out with some friends, went to Miami, did some camping, hung out with family. And then most importantly, I moved over from Tallahassee to Pensacola, which is where my clinical years are at. If you like what you've seen so far, stay till the end for an extra tidbit on mindset going forward and how I'm perceiving these years of my life. So once we got all settled in Pensacola, we started our clinical years. And the way clinical years works, at least for FSU, is the third year is where you cover your 6 major rotations, that being family medicine, surgery, psychiatry, internal medicine, pediatrics, and OBGYN. And I started off with family medicine and then followed by surgery last summer of 2024. And when I tell you it is a completely different ball game, trust me, it is so different. Because now essentially what our schedule looked like is we worked the doctor's schedule. So anytime your preceptor is working, you're working. Anytime they're on call, you're on call. So essentially you go in and work your 9-to-5 job or whatever the physician's schedule might be, and then you have to incorporate some study time afterwards, as well as some mental health and physical health activities afterwards. So it is a lot. And it's a very different schedule that you kind of have to get used to really fast. I will not lie, I had some trouble with that in the first few weeks, but once you kind of get in the groove of it, it becomes doable, and you kind of find little ways to study here and there throughout your preceptorship, and it's essentially doable. If you grit it through sometimes, it becomes enjoyable, because then you realize what you're studying actually helps you do better in the clinic, and they kind of bounce off each other, and you tend to just enjoy your clinical days more. I will say it's tougher, however, it's a lot more rewarding, because now you finally get to go into those patients' room and you get to speak to those patients yourself and be part of the medical decision-making process. And you go in, see the patient, do your physical, get the history, and then you talk to your preceptor and you kind of give them the rundown. You tell them your differential and your rationale behind it, and it just really makes you feel like, you know, you're that much closer to becoming your independent attending physician, you know, and it's just a surreal feeling. And so getting to do that really just motivates you to do better, and I don't know, it's just a different experience, and you won't really understand it until you get to that point and you feel those same emotions and feelings for yourself. So I did my family med rotation and then followed by surgery. I was a fan of family medicine because it kind of covers a whole broad area of medical conditions that you might come across in medicine. Surgery was also fun, but I did realize it wasn't my cup of tea, just because I'm not a fan of standing around for 5 to 6 hours doing a procedure, holding in my bladder, and just it's just not the lifestyle that I want for myself. Although the actual procedures and the surgeries that I got to be part of were actually super, super fun, and I had a blast learning from them. And that was also the first time I actually got to suture a real human being, and that was also a milestone that I was kind of looking forward to in medical school. So I was very happy to do that. Going into my fall semester of 2024, which is kind of into my third year already, going into my third rotation, I did internal medicine followed by psychiatry. Internal medicine is a lot. If you go on UWorld and you look up the number of questions that you have for that block, you will find that there is almost twice as much of content and questions on UWorld for internal medicine compared to any of the other rotations. So staying on top of it from day one was kind of the goal, and I think I did okay with managing it all. I didn't pass with flying colors, but however, I did do well on it, and I learned a lot from internal medicine. Rounding in the hospitals was by far the most educational experience that I've had, and I just really clicked with my preceptor, and I just had a really good time in internal medicine. So much so that I almost considered it as my future career. But keeping in the back of my mind my love and appreciation for emergency medicine, that I don't think will ever fade. Anyways, going into psychiatry, when I tell you psychiatry was so interesting in so many different ways, I was just baffled by it. The amount of psychiatric issues that you get to witness and see that normal people that you encounter on a day-to-day basis have to deal with is mind-boggling. And the lifestyle was actually pretty nice, and same way I considered internal medicine, I was considering psychiatry even more. But after some heavy deliberation and pros and cons lists, I decided emergency medicine should be something I stick to just because I am a lot more passionate about it, and it's just something that I feel strongly about. So I wouldn't want to sacrifice my passion for a lifestyle that I found appealing in psychiatry. Going into my winter break, we get about a month off, and so I took that month off to really soak in the last bit of fun I will have until I really lock in and study for my step 2 exam. So I went traveling. So I went essentially camping down through all of Florida. You can check out the videos of my winter break experience through my channel. But yeah, I went camping in different spots. I went skydiving. I went to Miami. I went on a cruise. It was essentially my last big hurrah before buckling in. And so that brings us to where we are at today. This is my flex rotation. So this is my first rotation coming back from winter break, and I'm currently in nephrology. I chose nephrology. It wasn't my first choice in terms of the elective selections that we have. I think it was my third or fourth choice. However, I am immensely glad that I got nephrology because I have been learning so much about the kidneys, and I knew that the kidneys kind of related to all medical conditions and all body systems that operate our body, but I never really understood the depth of it until I went through this rotation, which I'm still currently in, and really noticed the interplay between kidneys and how they affect the heart, and how the heart affect the kidneys, and how they relate to the liver and pancreas, and it's just one system that all collaborate together, and it all goes through the kidney. And the more I'm in it, the more I'm realizing just how essential this knowledge and the experience I'm getting is for my future, because I can definitely use this knowledge to help my patients as an ER physician one day in the future. So this brings us to my next few months, which leaves me with 2 of the required rotations that I need to finish, with that being pediatrics and OBGYN. Followed by the big, scary Step 2 exam that I plan on taking somewhere around mid-June. So the goal for now is keep doing what I'm doing, but also incorporate Step 2 studying into it, which does sound like a lot, but I am using this current time, which I don't have a shelf exam to study for, to start prepping for my Step 2 exam, and also start doing the Anki's and UWorld questions for pediatrics and OBGYN, just so I have a head start so that I'm not nerve-wracked during those shelf exams that will come up in the very near future. So last week I actually sat down with my dean in the Pensacola campus, and we kind of went over through a rough draft of the timeline that I will have for next year. Next year being the year that we apply for residency, do our externships, kind of like a trial residency, and basically get ready to match. And it got me so excited. So yes, there's a big milestone coming where I have to do well on my Step 2 exam. But after that, I have several internships or externships that I'm going to be partaking in. Specifically, I'm interested in going to North Carolina for my residency. And then second one being Austin, Texas. So my 2 externships is going to be the Southeastern program in North Carolina, and then the Austin, Texas one. So I'm going to do those in the first few elective rotations in the summer to kind of get to know the program, hang out with the residents, work with the physicians that work those exact residency programs, and do a trial residency, essentially. They call it pre-internship. So I'm super excited for that, and the best part is hopefully all that Step 2 knowledge will be very fresh in my brain, so I can really do well on those externships while I kind of show them who I am and what I'm capable of and how I would be a great fit in their program. And that would lead us to around September, October, which is where hopefully all my applications have been submitted for residency, and October, November, December being the interview seasons. And so those months I will be doing some kind of elective rotations that have less required time commitments, so I will have more time to kind of prep for interviews and do those interviews, and that's a whole beast of its own that I will tackle once I get there. But in the meantime, focusing in on step 2 and doing well on my shelf exams coming up. After that, January of 2026, the year of graduation. This is where things kind of start to slow down and people get, this is the part where people say fourth year is the easiest year. This is the part that they're talking about. This is where you've already done everything you could do for matching. You've already had your interviews, you've taken your step 2, and you are ready and are just simply waiting to match and hear what residency program you matched with. People say this is one of the more nerve-wracking seasons of your life in medical school, but it's also one of the exciting ones because the decision that the match brings you is going to determine your trajectory for the next 3 to 4 years, or perhaps even your life, because a lot of people tend to stay in the hospital or city that they do their residencies in for a majority of their life. All right, so now let's get into the mindset. I am big into the way that you think determines how your life plays out, and so I try to shift my perspective into things that cater towards a better, successful life for myself. So going forward, I know there's this huge exam standing in the way that I'm going to be taking mid-June, so it could cause a lot of stress for anybody, really. And the mindset going forward is take it one step at a time and enjoy the process as I go through it. I remember studying for the MCAT and I remember studying for the step 1. They always seem gruesome at first because it just seems like such a huge mountain to climb. However, once you take it one step at a time, you gain that momentum and you will notice that things just start clicking, and once they start clicking, things just become more enjoyable to do. So that's the mindset that I'm going to try and carry on with me. And hopefully enjoy the process and absolutely demolish the step 2 exam and knock my score out of the park. Next part is dealing with the pressure. Like I said, there's a lot of pressure, and in terms of staying motivated to continue and taking care of your mental health, I deal with that through exercise and meditation. So breath work and running have been a huge component of my mental health through medical school. I will say I'm not as consistent as I want to be with meditation, even though when I do go through phases when I do it, I do notice a very significant difference. And I usually tend to be consistent about it when those big board exams are coming up. But outside of that, running has been a game changer. It is the most tranquil time for me to kind of recoup, reflect, run, exercise, get my blood flowing. It just has so many benefits, not only physically, but mentally. It keeps me sharp, keeps me motivated, and it allows me to kind of think in the future and get myself excited and hyped up for what is to come. So that's my way of dealing with the stress. Next, I'm just really looking forward to my externships because this will be the first time that I'm actually in the emergency department as a medical student, working as a medical student, not just doing technician work like I did my summer of first year. And I'm just excited to finally get the opportunity to really practice what I intend to practice for the rest of my life. And it excites me and it riles me up, and I'm just really looking forward to this externships coming up. So I'm using that as a way to kind of pump myself up when I'm feeling down or unmotivated to sit down and study, which we all go through phases like that at some point through our careers. Lastly, since we're talking about the hardships that you do encounter through your medical school career or generally in life, the way I see it is the way you think about it is the way that it's going to play out. So I have met several people, whether online or through my rotations or in medical school, where they just have kind of a sour outlook on things happening that is outside of their control. Yeah, you have to be there a lot and dedicate a lot of time and study all the time. But if you think of it as a positive way, in a positive way, where it's like you get to do this, you get to study, you get the privilege of retaining this information that only select few in this world get to learn about and make a difference in the world. And I don't know, there's something about it that is very exciting to me. And I just, when you think of it that way, for me at least, it helps me go through those tough times in a very happy fashion. And that in turn helps me do better in the rotations and just overall do better in life because you're enjoying what you're doing. And when you enjoy something, you tend to do better in it. So the way you think matters, and I just try to keep that in the back of my head at all times. And that's kind of where the meditation comes into as well, because it helps you kind of stay aware of what your brain is doing and the thought processes happening in your brain, and it'll help you kind of redirect it to the way that is more beneficial for you, as opposed to letting it kind of drag you down without even you noticing it. Thank you all for following through my journey and listening to my spiel about how my medical school journey has been so far. It's been an intense but very rewarding and exciting time, to say the least. If you like this kind of content, drop a like down below and subscribe. Drop a few questions and let me know what kind of content you would like me to cover next time. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Drop a like down below and subscribe.